Hello again, Edwina Murphy-Droomer is my name, and I want to warmly welcome you to this interview in the series that is all about unleashing the audacious woman within. Today we have with us Anna Kowalska, and oh my goodness, are you in for a treat? Anna moved from Poland to the United States as a teenage girl, and before she was 30, she had created an income into the millions 3 times over and lost it each time. So her story is truly interesting and inspiring. She then immersed herself in spiritual, metaphysical, mind, body modalities in order to find her soul purpose. Welcome, Anna, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Edwina. My pleasure.
We've connected through mutual friends along the way, and I've watched your work on this journey over the last year or more. And so to have this opportunity to actually connect and have this conversation is an absolute honor.
Oh, isn't it a delight that we get to play in the work that we do and connect with each other? And that's what's available for all of us. I love it. I'm delighted. And I'm so excited about what we get to create here too in this conversation.
Yes. So for those in our audience that haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, I would love you to tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be doing the work that you do.
I love the question. So, and it's perfect place to start. I grew up in a communist country, and I start there because it gives a certain context to your audience about where we even start. A communist country, it means rules, and it means things are a certain way, and we learn to behave a certain way. We conditioned, right, to a certain kind of authority, and the left is the inner authority, right? So the external authority is what directs what our experience of life will be. And I came to America as a teenager, and I came because my grandmother was here, and it was an opportunity. I was 16 and a half. It was an opportunity to have a different experience of life. And when I was coming here, it was right after MTV came out, Dynasty, which is a show about very opulent life, right? And 90210. I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. Of course I'll go to America. I'll live in a neighborhood like a dynasty, right? My life will be set to a music, to like a 902, like a 90210 and MTV, right? Yeah. I'll be dating one of the guys from 90210. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'll come to America. Yet when I came to America, life was a little bit different. I never had to work in Poland, but when I came to United States, I went to work before my first day of school. Wow. So it's the first time I was introduced to even, I mean, I knew that people work, of course, but in my country, children didn't. Or even at 16, you just didn't work until you finished school. So it gave me a whole new concept of making money and exchanging my energy and time for, and whatever it is I do for money, and having my own money. That gave me a little bit of an insight into what does it look like when you have that kind of freedom. So in my 20s, I became a millionaire with my partner. We created a lot of success. I wasn't able to hold it because it was just so foreign to me. So even though I loved it, I got rid of it very, very quickly. And I kept creating experiences in my life that gave me a lot of opulence, a lot of richness in all aspects, not just money. Yet every single time I created what I think I wanted, I still felt like something was missing. And I felt like I was literally dying inside because there were parts of me that did not have a chance to be expressed. Now, I didn't have words for it. All I knew is life sucks. This is not what I signed up for, right? I think I want something, I create it, and then it feels completely different than what I would want to experience, right? So I started to ask myself, if it's not any of these external things, which I always was told is the point of life, right? Yeah. If those things don't matter, I mean, I reached a pretty amazing level of experience of opulence in my mid-20s, coming from a communist country. I was driving a Bentley. I was about to get married in a castle. I mean, I had a really amazing life, right? Very quickly. Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, all of it just didn't fit. So I did have a moment when I was 28. It was a few months before I was about to get married, and we were already living together in our beautiful multi-million-dollar house. And we were standing in a bathroom that was about to get renovated. And my then fiance was passing me a toothbrush because we were packing stuff for renovation. And as I took the toothbrush from him, I had this experience. My back was tied up. Now, at the time, I didn't have the words for it. Now I do. It was my wings that were literally strangled.
Oh, yes. I love that picture.
Right?
Yes.
Now, I didn't have words at the time, right? But I knew something was off. I knew that this was bondage. This was a sense of bondage. And the relationship was great. I mean, there was really on the outside nothing wrong with it. Everything else that I was creating through it was just so off for me.
Yeah.
So there was a sense of bondage that I experienced in a moment. And I literally still remember taking the toothbrush away from him and feeling that knots on my back, my wings tied up. Within just a few months, I left the relationship, and everything I created through it literally just completely walked away.
Wow.
And started to create things. I said, okay, if not this, then I'm going to create something completely different.
Yeah.
I still knew that I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have certain experience of wealth and be excited about what I'm creating. So I did. I moved to Manhattan and I created another level of success. And as soon as I had it, it just, again, bondage, right?
Wow.
So I started to search deeper, right? Now at this time, I started to learn a little bit more about spirituality and purpose and even mindset. Up until then, I created success without knowing what a goal is.
Yeah.
Nobody ever taught me about goals. And I already created things, right?
Yeah.
So I started to learn about setting goals, being intentional, and asking myself, what is this deeper reason for why I'm here?
Yeah.
And it set me on a whole new trajectory of discovering what's my purpose.
Yeah.
So it took me on a journey about a decade ago, which I am on right now, that has led me to doing the work that I do. So that's the
Wow.
milestones of my
Wow.
house.
My head is spinning. There are so many pieces in there that I want to dive into. First of all, I know that people will be going, how did she make all that money? It was in real estate, wasn't it? Was that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real estate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is it is a really, I love that you've brought this up. I know I did a training with Tony Robbins not so long ago, and he talks about the science of success and the art of fulfillment. And success without fulfillment is just total failure. So what you have done at a very young age is what most of us, it takes, a lot longer to work out, that it is not, like it's just not about that seeking of all the external things. There's a fulfillment element that is actually the key to success.
Yeah. And both are important. So, right. So right now we have this amazing experience in the whole entire world where we are being awakened to a lot of things that physically we've created are falling away because we've created from that same mindset I was in years ago, right? That when I have this house, this car, this much money in my bank account, I will have a certain sense of fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness, right?
Yes. And we spend our lives in that. I know that I've got clients that I need to lovingly bring them back to celebrate what they've already achieved, because they will have set a goal to achieve something here and have gone there, surpassed it, but feel like they've still got to keep, like this feeling of I haven't got there yet. Whereas, that recognition of actually hitting the goal, it's awesome to want to keep growing and to keep succeeding and, like bigger and better things. That's fabulous. But if we don't recognize the wins along the way and meeting those goals, then that fulfillment is never going to be there.
Right. Yeah. And even those goals, if they come from our conditioned experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what happened for me. I mean, that was conditioning. Like, I watched Dynasty. This is the kind of car you should drive. I drove a Bentley, and right now my car is worth a fraction of what that Bentley was, and I love my car more than I love driving that Bentley. So, I mean, so I teach sacred success, which is the merging of that inner experience and with that outer experience. So it's a richness on the inside and a richness on the outside, becoming unleashed, which is why I love the topic that you bring up, becoming completely unleashed. is merging of the both, right? So it's being on a path that's really fulfilling and creating results that are aligned with what we truly want, not because we think they will give us something.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Oh, love it. Love it. Oh my gosh, this conversation is going to be so good. Still already is. So, okay, so you've got to this place. You've recognized that there's steps along the way. You've now kind of got to a point where you're recognizing that there's something else required for this fulfillment. What was your first step into that? Was it the hand analysis? I'm dying to hear about that.
I know, right? It was a turning point for sure.
Okay.
Because again, even though I had all this awareness, I was already introduced to the coaching world. I already had several certifications. There was still something missing.
Yep.
So I was still not touching on that inner desire, like my real truth. Who am I and why am I creating what I'm creating, right? The vision, like right before we clicked the record, right?
Yes.
We spoke about the vision.
Yeah.
So often we are and I don't even want to say pushed, but the vision that we create, which is so important, without vision, people perish. It's a quote, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Vision is 100% the beginning of everything. But where does the vision come from, right? Does it still come from conditioning of what my parents told me or what my community told me or what my friends approved of me? Yeah. Or is it true vision of what I work at the soul level, right? So it's this higher experience of who we are. Or is this really truly what I want? Yeah. So when I got to that place of, okay, none of that worked. 3 times I created ton of everything and none of it worked for me. None of it felt good. And all of a sudden I discovered goals and consciousness and intuition and being aware and intentionally create. I was stuck on then what? Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah. Because what I knew didn't work. So what? Now what? Right? Yeah. And I still kept spinning in circles. And a friend of mine introduced me to hand analysis. Now, right after I walked away from my fortune the first time, I went into despair and I went to every psychic, tea leaf reader, numerologist, palm reader that I could find. Literally, it became my second job for 6 months. All my money went into it. Every weekend was filled with appointments because I wanted somebody to give me certainty of where is my life going, right? So right now we are in this place we don't know. And I relate to that because I truly didn't know. I mean, literally everything in my life, I pushed one thing and everything had to go because it was all connected, right? Yeah. So I'm here sitting with a blank slate. What do I do? And I had all this fear and uncertainty. So I went to all the outside sources and it didn't work for me. So I swore it off. I said, nobody will ever tell me what my future is like. So when my friend told me about hand analysis, I'm like, oh no, stay away, the devil. But then I learned that there was science to it. Yeah. So before I had scheduled the appointment, I read up a little bit about it. And I learned that there is a gentleman Richard Unger, who created a system and backed it up by thousands of hands, by reading thousands of hands. I think when he launched the system, 50,000 pairs of hands went through his desk, the prints, and he proved that certain things meant certain things. So this is the part I love the most. Our fingerprints are created in a utero. So when a baby is being created in mama's belly and not much is shaped, our senses aren't created, aren't formed, the fingerprints already look the way they do. So they're smaller because we have smaller fingers, but our fingerprints are already there. They never change. People tell me, what if I cut myself? You will cut yourself. Maybe it will grow back the way it is, right? The pattern will not change. There may be a break in it, but the pattern will not change. Nobody alive has the same fingerprints. And we know that because government uses them to identify people, right? Yeah. So in these fingerprints, so this is a little bit of a metaphysical, beautiful aspect of it. But again, it was proven by science, and science means that it's repeatable and it has been backed up by instances, right? 50,000 at least. And it's been hundreds of thousands since then. Yeah. So the fingerprints carry a code for what the soul came to fulfill through this human experience. So if we believe it's something higher than just this human experience, right, where we're just flesh and bones, there is an intention, a vision, if you may, at this higher level that comes and embodies in a human body and then has a wish that this human being expresses themselves a certain way, right? So Navajo here in United States, it's a tribe, right? Navajo, they have a beautiful saying that the great what's the word? The great power. No, they don't call it the great power, but let's just call it the great power for a moment because the word escapes me. The great spirit blows air to the baby's fingers and forms the grooves. Isn't it beautiful?
Oh,
It's so beautiful, right? Yeah.
it's tapping into every feminine cell in my body that's just, more.
Right. Oh, that's how I felt about it. So, and that's just fingerprints. So I'm just going to quickly tell you about the rest of the hands, but we'll go back to fingerprints because I think it'll tell more of the story. Everything in hands means something. The lines in your hands are the mirror of neural pathways in your brain. So how you have been conditioned to think, to feel, to know yourself, to connect to your family, all of it is in the lines. And these lines can change. The only thing that doesn't change in hands is the fingerprints. The fingers, the way they
I didn't
how
know
they are
that.
nestled. I know,
The
me
lines
neither.
in your hand change.
Yeah, they totally do. I've already had my lines changed since I've been doing this work. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
fascinating.
Yeah. And I witness it with my clients too. So I won't spend too much time because I could literally spend days talking about it. But just know everything in hands can change but fingerprints. And remember, fingerprints are the code for the expression that the soul, the vision for this being is encoded in the fingerprints, right?
Wow.
So when I went to have this analysis done, and the way that it's done, and I do it the same way, remotely all over the world, I send people ink, you make prints of your ink, and then we analyze the ink, right? The prints, because it's a lot clearer and it can be done remotely. And these days it's very convenient, right?
Yeah.
So the woman on the other side who was doing it for me, she was actually in California. I was still in New York. I'm in Colorado now. She gets on the phone and she tells me she asks me questions. She doesn't even tell me. And with her first question of what my experience of life is like, a vision opened up. A vision that I knew I carried in my heart, and I would even say some things that were related to it, but I would never, ever dare to spearhead my life towards it. Yeah. So when she said it to me, I'm like, okay, tell me more. So she dove deeper into aspects of me. And this is the beautiful part that I think it's so relatable to the topic of this conversation, right? Becoming unleashed. I was operating most of my life from the shadow side of myself. So we have, right, the shadow is what it's, and it's not bad or good, right? So this is also gave me permission to not feel so bad about mistakes I've made or things I tried to escape. I tried to escape power. Well, power is part of my purpose. However, I was on a shadow part of it, which is being afraid of power, giving power over, right? It's fear of power, powerlessness, feeling like I am at the effect of things in life, right? I couldn't just, even though I created what I think I wanted, I created what I think I wanted that I was told would give me certain things. That's powerlessness. I wasn't diving into what do I really want. Yeah. I always knew creativity was something that was really important to me, but I didn't grow up in a world where creativity was valued or expressed. Yeah. So there was no space for me to creatively express myself. Same thing with leadership. Where I grew up, leadership was dangerous. Yeah. Communist country, right? Leadership was dangerous. Yeah. Leadership from women was dangerous. I was born in 75, right? Yeah. So that idea that women could lead, still very foreign at the time. Yeah. So combining all of that, I learned that I was living on the shadow side of who I came here to be. And hearing that gave me permission to say, wow, there were circumstances in my life that have taught me who am I at this lower frequency of who I came here to be, right? Not bad or good. Yes. Just at the effect of things in life, yes. Right? Yeah. And for some people, it may be an ability to speak, meaning they will actually use their voice, but not use their voice for what they really want. Yes. If it matters to them, they will go mute. For some other people, it will be self-worth. And we think it's an issue for most people, but it's not. Because if it's at the soul level, right? If it's in your fingerprints, it will be something that gives you a lens to really start determining, am I creating my reality through this lens of what I create, what I provide has no value? Or am I willing to move into the other side, which is mastery, which is light, which is I am the source. So everything that comes through me is automatically of value to another being. Maybe I just haven't found that being, or I haven't owned what I create.
Yeah.
Right? So that gave me this, I became unleashed. And it's still a stepping of in a journey, steps in a journey, but it gave me a complete shift in trajectory.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm just, it's like your blueprint for life. I do a blueprint for life workshop, but it's a very, it comes from that heart space rather than the head space. But the idea of actually having like this blueprint on your fingertips, oh my gosh, I want to know more.
Right?
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will never look at your hands the same way.
Yeah. And I really had no idea that the lines on your hands could change, not your fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
that's fascinating.
The way your fingers are attached to your hand could change, because the way they are right now means something. So if there is a variation in where the fingers are literally attached to your hand, and it means a certain expression that you here are in the world. For example, I'll give you one. See how low my pinky is in relation to my index finger? Well, it's not the same for everybody, but it could be for a lot of people. So technically, this indicates that I have a certain sense of lonely at the top. So if I get to a certain level, there'll be nobody around me. In connection with other things in my hands, my connection to my tribe, I will not outgrow my tribe out of sense that I will be left alone.
Oh.
And we can dig for beliefs, but now looking at this, I can say, well, wow, that actually is something that is true to me. I grew up in a very tight-knit not community and family, right? Where everybody, and communist country, everybody is equal, right? So if I try to be bigger, have more than anybody else that I have known most of my life, or at least my growing up life, my shaping life, that's dangerous to my mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like my brain is wired that that's dangerous. So as soon as I got those millions, I mean, I literally felt, now I know, I didn't know it then. It was dangerous.
Yeah.
It meant I would be shunned out of the tribe.
So you can change that story. Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally change that story, right? Yeah. So once you change the story, now I haven't experienced it yet, but I can't imagine that it would happen quickly. But I have heard of people who have actually been able to change how their fingers are positioned. Once you change that story, first of all, once you know it, it no longer drives you, right? So right there, awareness is key, right?
Yeah.
Over time, the way my fingers are positioned will change, because my hand is reacting to what my wiring is. Isn't that amazing?
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. I know that I'm going to hop off and take a photo of my hand so that I can watch it change over time.
It's amazing. It really is. And even just awareness itself, because when we're talking about creating, right, based on conditioning instead of being unleashed into who we truly are without apology, knowing this, having awareness that I came here to be a certain way that was not okay. Not okay within the environment I grew up. It gave me permission to forgive myself that I've gone many years being different, right? And then every single time that I chose something that's less than who I know I am, again, I forgave myself, and I can move forward instead of, mea culpa, right?
Yep. So, okay. So if visioning is the first step in this process, the way that you do that for yourself or for your clients is the first step, looking at the fingertips. And then
interesting.
Yeah.
So the first step is still really getting really connected to your desires, right? That's still the first step. Connect to your desires. Go to places that you have never allowed yourself to be. Now, once we have that vision, well, I know you know this, right? It opens, even asking that question, right? Like, what do you really want? What do you really want? right? Blank slate. If nothing mattered, what
Most
do
of
you
us,
really want?
yeah, most of us can write a list of the things we don't want
Yes.
or that we're
Yes.
trying to move away from, but
Mm-hmm.
we're missing the step if we don't know where we're trying to move to. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even asking that question opens up so much for us, right? So
Yeah.
the first step is still vision. However, then the next step is putting that vision through, well, is it aligned with who you came here to be? Because the purpose in my work and in hand analysis isn't necessarily what you came here to do, it's who you came here to be, which is aligned with be, do, have. I know you're familiar with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we create this vision, and then is this aligned? You have a certain vision of what it is you want. You're allowing yourself to open up that aspect of who you are. But then let's look at, are you still seeing that vision and what's possible for you based on what you are afraid to lose? Like, I won't let myself dream of this because if this happens, I will lose X, Y, Z, right? So I won't even talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So looking through the lens of a fingerprints, I can then ask my clients, are you asking big enough? Are you visioning? Are you visioning truly from a perspective of somebody who is a creator, right? Truly a creator,
I like to
right?
say, does that feel good or does it feel amazing?
Right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So visioning still comes first. Visioning still comes first. And then we get into the being, right?
Yeah.
Who did you come here to be? And then how does that inform your vision?
Yeah.
How does it make it bigger? How does it maybe shift it a little bit? So maybe if your vision didn't include aspects of who you came here to be, we get to include that in your vision, because you will be in the same place if you don't that you were before you came to me. If we don't include that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, it's who we want to be in the world is where I just love to play. That's such a fantastic, exciting place. And so, talking to the women in my community, it's always about pulling back those layers. And it's, without some guidance on how we get, like what layers we're actually pulling off, we feel like, there's been so much talk about being authentically yourself. And it's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
me. How do you, like,
What do you mean?
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
I'm being me. How can I be somebody
Yeah.
else? But, we go through our lives accumulating these messages that you've done such a beautiful job of talking about who we are supposed to be on the planet.
Yeah.
And I think of
Yeah.
them as these kind of layers and layers and layers, like a big coat, a big heavy coat that we wear that defines how we can show up in the world. And it can be something as simple as, well, naughty girls wear red lipstick, girls that are a bit, that way. I mean, the
Right?
messaging that we take on is so absurd.
Yeah.
Or it
Yeah.
can be, you didn't do well in school, so, you're never going to make money. We just hang on to that belief.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are, when we look at being, let's play there a bit because it's
Yeah.
fun. And we're
I love it.
unleashing that bold, daring, audacious woman within without restriction to prior ideas. What are some of the other tools perhaps that you use in that space that our women can play with?
Oh, so I'll bring it back to hand analysis
Yeah.
just for a brief moment.
Yes.
It is a 100% my experience that at some point in our lives, we were very much aware of who that beautiful being inside of us is, right? Very rarely does it get shut down so early that we don't remember. And even if we shut it down completely, there is a tiny little blink of an experience here and there, a glimpse, that when I do tell my clients or ask them, what's your experience with creativity? Is it okay to be visible? Is it okay to be seen? Were you very expressed as a child? Was it okay to twirl and dress up, right? Like those who came here to be creatively expressed, which I attract those people who came here to be seen, creatively expressed, be recognized and appreciated for their appreciation for beauty and creativity, right? So when I asked them about this, and even though their whole entire life, there was never an indication, like for me, there was never an indication that there was any kind of access to creativity. However, I remember walking through the streets of Manhattan, and for no reason, I would say, I'm an artist, but I don't know what kind. Why would I say that? Why would I say that? Because my soul was already giving me messages, right? And there was one time in my life, in my early 20s, where for 48 hours straight, I was creating something. Somebody asked me to make something. I took it on. And then I stayed up for 48 hours, literally just drinking water and having snacks, no sleep, creating. And then I shoved it under the rug like it never happened. Those were indicators of my creative energy wanting to come through me. So the reason why I bring it up is that we are never really left in the dark about this. There are glimpses of ourselves unleashed, powerful creators, because we can go back to moments when we thought about something and then it happened. And right? Or we were asked to go somewhere and we were excited about it. And then it was the best experience ever. Like we know certain truths. We bury it under the rug for whatever reason. But starting to connect those moments when we felt alive, when we felt something that maybe, and for some there will be shame right after, right? Yeah. So if you were passionate, on the other side of passion there is shame. If you are completely alive and passionate about something, and then you felt yourself pull in and felt ashamed that you just danced your booty off and everybody was looking at you, remember that moment, because that's an indication of you being somebody who needs to be seen, who needs to twirl through life, right? Yeah. Feel yourself completely alive, but it wasn't okay. And the interesting thing is that it doesn't necessarily have to be that somebody told us something. It doesn't necessarily have to be that we observed somebody's behavior. We literally, and this is true for a certain kind of energy, like creative energy, fear of rejection is on the other side of it. If that person was fully expressed, and let's say it was a child, 5 years old, bursting and laughing and singing, and her father looked at her in judgment. He might have not even looked in judgment. He might have had something in his eye. But in a very unfortunate moment, he looked sideways. All of a sudden, this 5-year-old decides, my father doesn't like when I behave this way, and my father is a source of love, support, and security for me. I will never dance again. Right? So looking at these places where we felt these pops of something we really wanted, it was unreasonable, right? Like nowhere in my history is there in my history, in my lineage, there is no major wealth. Somehow I knew I was meant to be wealthy. I knew it. There are no entrepreneurs in my immediate lineage. Somehow I knew I was meant to be a business owner. Completely unreasonable. And I still do work a lot on my mindset, but I knew that it's part of my expression actually shows up in my hands too. So the audience, those of you in the audience, can start asking yourself questions. What is this unreasonable thing that at some point I wanted and then I shoved it? I talk, somebody that comes to mind for some reason, maybe somebody needs to hear this. A woman who became a nurse because her mom got sick. She went to school to be a journalist. And then as soon as she finished school, her mom got very sick. So she decided to become a nurse. She's happy doing what she's doing, but guess what? Something's missing. I look at her hands and she's meant to be an author. She's meant to be expressed through a written word. And so I asked her that, having no recollection or no knowledge whatsoever of her experience or her history. I said, have you ever thought about writing? She says, I went to school to be a journalist and I've been wanting to write. I'm like, well, my dear, that's your point of entry.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I don't imagine that there's anybody listening into this that hasn't got stories popping into their head left, right, and center of their own childhood. And I've got a few that are coming up. I know that, beauty was a big one for my mum. How you looked was, for girls, was everything, but you weren't allowed to look like you were trying. So it was this really so I had all these issues around putting makeup on. Like I needed to look like everything was perfect, but you can't look like you're trying. And it was just this constant kind of pull of getting things wrong. It might seem really superficial, but it's, all these kind of messaging, and I'm not making her wrong. That's the messaging that she received. And we, we just pass it down. And I know, you know, thinking about it in terms of my children,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a, you know, big advocate, particularly of little kids, of having their heads firmly planted in the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all about imagination and those beautiful
Yes.
games. Whereas their dad was like, for goodness sake, get your head out of the clouds. You're never going to go anywhere living in fantasy land. That was his training. So my kids have had both these messages, and it's interesting
Mm-hmm.
now that they're older to, you know, dive into that, not making either right or wrong. It's just like, you know, there's,
Yeah.
you get to choose.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's amazing because you're absolutely right. Neither one is right or wrong. And I think that's the most precious gift right now, especially like right now where we are in a world. We all know something's happening, right? We're breaking through some way of being that didn't work for a whole entire human existence, right? It's just for all species didn't work. We're breaking through something. So there is a lot of opportunity for judgment, right? For beating yourself up, for guilt, for shame. And I think that's why, again, I love hand analysis, because
Yeah.
it gave me access to say, wow, this is something my soul wanted to experience. Like your mom, you have, in my worldview, you have chosen your mom at the soul level because she would teach you some ways that then would give you an experience of what is it like to try to fit in, look beautiful, but don't stand out, because that to me, like you're trying means you're standing out, right?
Yeah.
So fit in, look beautiful, but fit in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I know I've seen your pictures. Like I love the way you show up, right? With this beautiful dress and your red lipstick and your beautiful earrings. Like this is like, I am okay being seen. I am okay standing out, right?
Yeah. It's taken
So
a lot of personal development to get to that point.
yeah, but that's a human
Yeah.
experience to me,
Yeah.
right? Like imagine your mom just was, and I promise you there are things, and I'm okay with it. Hopefully you are too. No, not my children. There are things that your children would have to unlearn.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh my goodness, yes.
Right?
Good question. I call my oldest son, he's about to turn 21, so it might come
Mhm.
up at his 21st speech if we're allowed to have a 21st party. That he was my guinea pig. I'm just practicing. There's no
Yeah.
rule book here.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if it works out. Let's see how it works out.
Exactly. Yeah, poor kids. Anyway.
And I see it now as part of the experience of like,
Yeah.
this is my soul wanted to learn how to be bigger than certain conditioning, be bigger than certain beliefs, right? Allow myself to stretch and say, back to authority, right? I grew up thinking that authority is all outside of me. What my teachers, what the man in the uniform says, it's what goes.
Yeah.
And learning that actually that's not the case. And there is something inside of me that is a much bigger authority than anybody outside of me could ever be. And it's still continuously my place where I get to learn to question things that people say should be certain way or done certain way or be like this or be like that, right? So, and that's part of what my soul wanted to experience. Who do I become as somebody who starts questioning and trusting my own authority, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, this conversation could go on for days, and I
So
honestly
good.
wish we had days. I have a question um, that I would love to ask you, that I'm asking all my speakers, and I don't tell you in advance because I want to know what just lands.
I love it. I love it. Give it to me.
Bring it on. I knew you'd be that way. So what I would love you to tell us, what is the first thing that comes in when I ask you what is the most audacious thing you have done in your life? Bold, daring, without restriction to prior ideas. And I'm sure there's many, but if there was
Yeah.
one.
I'm looking to see, and memory comes in. So just 4 years ago or so, one of my mentors, and she's the one who actually, through whom I took on hand analysis as a tool that I use for other people. But what happened was I was at her event, and I asked a question. She asked people in the audience, if you have this marking, raise your hand. My hand just went up. I didn't have this marking, but I knew I had to be there. So she calls me on the stage. She goes, yeah, you don't have this marking. But because I was there, she's like,
Yeah.
okay, but you're here. And the questioning began and a journey began, and we ended up at, what would you love to do if you just like, could do anything right now. And I love to dance and paint. I actually even created experiences since then. I invited women to dance and paint together. And she said, well, the stage is yours. She gets off the stage and asks DJ on the back of the room to play a song. Now, he played a complete song that I would never play. I mean, it was a beautiful song, but not something I would choose to have this experience to. And I pretended to dance and paint on a huge canvas that wasn't even there, right? It pretended there was a huge canvas on the back of me on the stage. And I just moved my body as if I was painting to the music. And that was probably the most free experience, the most freedom-filled experience that I've ever had. That's just what comes in as like the moment that feels audacious. I mean, amazing. In a moment, people in the audience, the guy plays the music, I'm like, okay, here I am. Wow. I could get off the stage, but no, let me go. Let me do this.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. So there's a story coming into my head that I don't know that I have ever shared before, but it just made me think of the painting. I spent a lot of time in the States, as you know, last year doing this leadership training. And one of the beautiful women I was doing it with adopted me, and I stayed with her while I was in LA in between all sorts of different events. Jamesine Blakely, but she took me to a weekend retreat, and it was called a yoni retreat, which I'd never been exposed to the word yoni, but it's your vagina for those of you that don't know it either. And during that retreat, we were invited to take a photo of our yoni and paint it. And it was the most challenging experience for me. But when I took a photo of the painting and sent it to my husband, who was just couldn't believe. I don't think of myself as a prude, but that's a stretch. That's a challenge outside something that I would have ever experienced before. But it is, being put in a situation where you're doing things that you would never normally do. Oh my gosh, it's so freeing and exciting and, part of this beautiful experience. I just felt like I needed to share that story for someone.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's amazing. Yeah. Did it just feel so alive as you were doing, like as much as it was like, I can't believe I'm doing it. It's like live, running.
Yes, but it was even being connected with all these women, and except for my girlfriend Jamesine, they were all strangers. But the conversations were just magic, because it just peels back all those layers of propriety and what you would normally talk about in a cafe or whatever, and the conversations were just magic anyway.
Oh my god, thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh, what a gift. Thank you for sharing that. It's so amazing.
So I know you have a beautiful gift for our audience. Would you take a minute to tell them what that is?
Sure. It's a recording that I've created about, and literally because we are so in a conversation, the title just escapes me completely, but it's basically
the links will be below. Yeah.
Great. But it's basically 5 shifts that I've made for myself to be on purpose and prosperous. So one of the things that was happening for me is I knew how to make money, but I didn't know how to make money being me and doing what I wanted to do. The two of them could not come together in my world. So I had to learn how to do that. And once I learned how to do that, now that's what I teach my clients, right? How to merge making money, being who you are, and apologetically. So it's purpose and prosperity, and it's 5 shifts, and it's how to birth your highest soul level body of work on purpose and prosperously, even if you don't know your purpose yet. See, it came to me.
Beautiful. It sounds amazing. I'm going to be diving in. I want to check it out. Absolutely. It's beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. This has been the most beautiful conversation, and I'm so honored that you're part of this series.
Thank you.
Hey, oh my goodness. I don't think that I, really want to pull out and say that was my favorite interview, because I could probably say it a few times over. But at the moment, oh my goodness, that was such a fantastic conversation. what are you going to take from it? What can you put into action? You know, what's coming up for me that I know I loved the reminder of, and I hope you will take it on board as well, is the idea of the science of success and the art of fulfillment. We live in this perpetual state of, I'll be happy when I have that money. I'll be happy when I lose that weight. I'll be happy when I have that car. I'll be happy when my kids have grown and they don't demand so much of my time. Any of that sound familiar? We all fall into that trap. And if we don't learn the art of being grateful for what we have right now, for seeing the abundance, wealth, and beauty in our life right now, I wholeheartedly promise that you won't be able to see it. You won't have that sense of fulfillment. Even if you have $1 million in the bank, you may already, whatever your next level is, when you reach that weight, when your children are older, any of those things that we are putting our happiness, our sense of fulfillment for the life we are living on hold, we won't experience that if we don't learn the art of fulfillment now. And that is where the practice of gratitude comes in. So I would invite you to look at your life, where you are right now. And of course, I'm going to be doing a beautiful workshop about this at the end of this show. However, if you take the time now and look at some of those key areas in your life, your physical health, your mindset, your relationships, your wealth, your life purpose, your faith or spirituality, where are you right now in all those areas of your life? What have you already got to be truly grateful for? And then we can keep working on the science of success in all these areas, and the art of fulfillment is going to come along with us for the ride. So I hope that that is what you will use from this. Also, I mean, who'd have known that we're carrying the blueprint for our life purpose on our fingers? This is something I've seriously never heard of before, and I'm dying to dive in. So I'm going to be looking at Anna's beautiful free gift. Oh, so much more, so much inspiration, so much to learn. What a beautiful journey this is. I'm glad you're with me. That's it from me today. Much love and bye for now.